Part 1. Hemingway spent his life testing this theory. Drinking, fighting, writing, loving, leaving. He knew what it was to feel good after something. And he knew what it was to feel so bad afterwards that you spent the rest of the night, or sometimes the rest of your life, trying to outrun it. He reduced morality to one line. How do you feel when it's over? Simple, not philosophical, not complicated, just honest. Because long before we build systems, rules and moral arguments, there's a quieter signal most people recognize: the feeling afterwards. You said or did something against your better judgment. Maybe nobody noticed, but you did. That's the moral compass you were born with. Most of us simply learned not to trust it. Part 2. How immorality shows up. When people hear the word immorality, they often imagine something extreme. Crime, corruption, big scandals. But most immorality is far more ordinary. It shows up in small ways. Promises you never intended to keep. Speaking differently about someone depending on who's in the room. Agreeing with things you quietly know aren't true just to avoid conflict. The moment you choose looking good over being real. The silence when you should have spoken. The word you used against yourself when you failed. Not lies to other people, lies to yourself. I can't do that. I'm not capable. People like me don't succeed. Those are also violations of integrity, because integrity isn't just about how we treat other people, it's about whether our words and actions align with what we know to be true. And the thing about small compromises is that they accumulate. One tiny step away from truth doesn't feel like much until one day you realize how far you've wandered from yourself. Part 3. The psychology of integrity, honor, and virtue. Integrity is alignment. Your word matches your action. Your action matches your values. And your values match what you know to be true. When your word matches your action, you feel solid. When it doesn't, you feel off, fragmented, like you're made of parts that don't quite fit. That's what immorality does. It divides. And a divided person can't stand still. They have to perform, defend, explain, justify. Because if they stopped moving, the gap between what they say and what they do might become visible. Honor isn't about medals or titles, it's about integration, all of you moving in the same direction. Virtue isn't perfection, it's the willingness to return again and again to alignment. These traits aren't something you perform, they are what you gradually become. That process is rarely glamorous. It means correcting yourself, admitting when you were wrong, and sometimes standing quietly with the truth while everyone else nods along with the easier option. Integrity doesn't always make you popular, but it does make you stable. Part 4. Metaphor, the jammed compass. Imagine you're walking through thick fog. Can't see more than a few feet ahead, but you have a compass. Solid, reliable, always points north. You trust it, even when the path feels wrong, even when you can't see why it's taking you this way. You trust it. Now imagine that compass is slightly off, just a degree or two, barely noticeable. You walk and walk and walk. Days later, you're nowhere near where you thought you'd be. You're lost, exhausted, confused. The compass felt right, but it was off. That's what happens when you ignore the feeling after. Not drastic betrayals, just small misalignments, tiny deviations, a word here, a silence there, a choice that didn't quite match. The compass, your felt sense of right and wrong, is the most accurate instrument you have, but only if you keep it clean. Only if you pay attention to the feeling after, because if you ignore it long enough, it stops working and then you're walking blind. Part 5. Reframe, invitation and pattern interrupt. There's a line from Don Miguel Ruiz that many people know. Be impeccable with your word. That sounds lofty, but it can be much simpler than that. Start by noticing how you speak about yourself. Many people break their integrity dozens of times a day without realizing it. I'm useless. I always mess things up. I can't do anything right. Imagine saying those things about someone you care about. You wouldn't, yet people say them to themselves constantly. What if integrity isn't about never deviating, but about noticing when you do and returning? What if the compass doesn't need to be perfect, it just needs to remain responsive? So here's your invitation this week. Get curious about the feeling afterwards. Not guilty, not ashamed, just curious. That thing I said, how did it feel afterwards? That choice I made, what did it leave behind? No judgment, just information. And slowly life becomes simpler. Less explanation, less drama, more alignment. Part 6. Hypnotic Close. And if it's comfortable for you to do so, you might allow your eyes to close. Just for a moment. Noticing your breathing. Nothing to change, just observing. And somewhere inside, you may notice that you've been carrying something. Not guilt, not shame, just knowing. A quiet knowing about the moments that didn't quite align, the words that didn't quite match, the choices that left a taste you couldn't name. And you may also notice that knowing doesn't have to be a weight. It can be a signal, a compass, quietly pointing, not accusing, just showing. And as you breathe gently, easily, you might allow yourself to notice that returning is always possible. Not fixing or perfecting, just returning to a direction that feels right. And that quiet alignment can continue unfolding long after this moment ends.